Right, now I've got the auto stop sort of working. I've got it on its side and I'm going to do a complete recap and do all the boards and hoof them all out, and then perhaps we'll do a test just to see how many really were naff. But yeah, I got it sideways as you can see, and just hope it don't fall over. But it's a nice deck, and so I think it's probably worth doing so. So I'll get on with that. It'll take me a while. Well, I've just finished recapping the baseboard and still works, so that's the main thing. So that's a goer. So yep, that will do. Now I'll have the Dolby boards out and work on those. Here's the Dolby board. There's the FET that I guess does the companding and expansion for the Dolby system, because I guess it is an expansion and companion, oh no, I can't even pronounce it right, system. So it's increasing the level on record and then decreasing it on playback, so that the dynamic range is the same as it was previously. Some inductors here, that's no doubt some MPX filtering. So there's a number of electrolytics here, some tantalums in here as well, but I'm going to leave them alone because generally they're okay unless they're short-circuited. So both boards are identical. I've written down which one's left just in case there's some differences. So I'll go ahead and recap that, but so far not really a lot of problems with the capacitors. They have risen in value, but nothing too untoward. Okay, so the Dolby boards are recapped. Yes, the capacitors are physically a lot smaller. They are Panasonic ones. I expect them to be a little bit bigger than that. That's because I use 35 volts and not 63. Let's just hope that doesn't come back to haunt me in any way, but the only difference is going to be possibly slightly lower ESR, but measuring, no, I can't see any difference. It's a bag of where we were. Most of the capacitors have risen in value up to 50%, but none of them have a really bad ESR. The worst I saw was a couple of ohms, so nothing really to report home there. So I'm probably going to find that it makes no difference to recording level or anything else, so it's likely to be another problem. Of course the head is worn, that may be an issue. While I've got it out, here's a close-up of the BIOS board, and the clips are quite interesting at the top here. You actually slide the clips out of the way, because I try to hinge the board towards me, and it locks, so you can't do that, so I had to hinge the two plastic brackets along the metal to do it. But anyway, yeah, there's the BIOS oscillator, pair of transistors, push-pull, and the output transformer, and a pair of capacitors, no doubt, to set the BIOS coupling. So there's the BIOS board anyway. I've got it out because I've got to change electrolytic. Right, back on the Tandberg again. I haven't looked at it for 6 weeks or more. I did the recap and I've just put it into record. I've got a mono input from the tone generator, so 1 meter says half a dB, one says 1 dB, so that's a little bit more accurate than it was previously. So I'm going to see if the recap has done anything. I don't actually have a lot of hope. I think the head's worn, but I'll make some test recordings and I'll take it off pause. Hopefully we won't have any auto stop issues anymore. And there goes the tape round the reel. So I'm going to make a test recording and just see what it plays back like. Well, that's certainly better than it was before. Last time I tried this, it was well down, wasn't it? Well, the right channel is sitting at +1 and this one's sitting at about -2. So that's a little bit better than we had previously. So maybe the head isn't as bad as I thought. Now last time we did this, I'm sure we were back at -10, so yeah, that's certainly an improvement over what we had before. Listening to the tone, I'm sure I can hear a woe in that. But, no, that's certainly a little better than it was, so perhaps I need to look at how to adjust the playback level, etc. So maybe the head isn't as bad as it first appears. It's not perfect. There is a railroad through it, but looking at these meters now, that recording level is a little bit more what it should be. The only way might be to play this back on another machine, although we're only talking about a 2 dB difference here. According to these meters, that's not a lot, is it? Well, I'm now going to record a 10 kilohertz tone. You can probably hear it in the background and it's probably very irritating, but I noticed the sensitivity, input sensitivity, is a lot higher at 10 kilohertz. I'm not sure why. It's quite a few dBs difference, and that's a bit strange. At the moment I've just been reading the manual about the adjustments. There is many adjustments, but lacking a decent test tape is going to make it very difficult for me to set the levels again. So what I might do is see if I can come up with some alternative method to adjust it, but I thought I'd just do this 10 kilohertz test first, and then we'll just play back and see what's happening and how much further back it is. If the meters are responding different or the inputs responding different, that's interesting. It might be because I've got quite a bit of resistance on the input, so that the input actually looks different with a little bit of series resistance. But let's rewind it, just see what the levels are. Wow, that's quite down, isn't it? Interesting. The tone is there, but I'm below -20, so I'm a little bit puzzled by that. Why is the recording so low? Interesting, very interesting. Just doing some test tones, going in 1 kilohertz jumps. Starting at 1 kilohertz. Well, that's not a spectacular frequency response, is it? Oh dear. Either it's the bias, or more likely it's the head again, just like it was on the Dynatron. I have a bit of contrast issue here, but I've just done an auto bias on the Kenwood. You listen to the whir and flutter. So that's about minus 5. That's not bad for a normal tape. Okay, and now the Kenwood recording reproduced on the Tandberg. a lot better. But then you've only got the one path on the head, it wasn't used for record as well. Plus of course on the Kenwood I did use the auto bias, so I know it was pretty flat, and it did look flat on the previous recording, so meh head I reckon. Well, 123 millihenries on this head, and 134 ohms, that's quite low. I don't think I've got anything with that low resistance at all, so that's pretty low. This is the other side of the head, the other channel, 118 millihenries, 135 ohms. They usually are slightly different, I don't know why, must be the way they're wired, but that is a low resistance head, that is. Well, this head is the same as I put in the Dynatron, and it goes off just as you want to display the results, doesn't it? Typical. Anyway, this is the same head as I fitted to the Dynatron. This one's got a lower inductance and a much higher DC resistance too. So this head is going to be quite a different characteristic, so it's very difficult for me to make my mind up what to use really. It's all down to inductance and resistance, so it's going to be more down to inductance at the higher frequencies and more down to resistance at the lower frequencies. I don't want to end up with the same problem I had with the Dynatron, where it was incapable of actually driving the damn thing. I couldn't get a high enough record level. Well, this one's 122 millihenries. It's a head I found laying around. It came out of a cassette deck, but not a very high-end one. Its profile's different, but looking at it, the mounting holes seem to be the same. The DC resistance, if I push the button, is higher. So that's one possibility. Well, this is hopefully the final bit of work on this machine. I have replaced the head now, and it was a bit of a problem trying to realign it, so I did almost wish I hadn't did it, but to be honest with you, the head is pretty worn that I've taken out. In fact, I'll try and get a close up, if hopefully it'll focus. It is pretty worn, so I think it's just as well I did replace this head, but basically it is still working. I've done some realignment. I've checked the bias. I ended up turning the bias down slightly, which has balanced out the bass, the 10 kilohertz and 400 hertz tone. Now, after about how long ago was this? I took this apart about 8 months. I've got to remember how to reassemble it, so I should probably be looking at my own videos, I guess, to remember how it goes together, all the piano keys, etc. But I think I'll leave it there, and we'll get this back together. So this is the bottom. We've managed to straighten it out to a certain extent, but it's never going to be quite how it was, but hopefully now it won't cause a short circuit on the circuit board. I will still admit to not really understanding how this pause mechanism and this interlock works, but it does seem to move now. Now I've straightened out some of the metal work, but this is obviously some sort of interlock, I think, on the eject. So when one of the buttons is down, you can't eject. And the other problem I've had is getting this DIN socket to align, because we know this has had an impact, and I think perhaps that's going to make it a little bit difficult to get this to mechanically line back up, but we'll give it a go. I'm just trying to put the lid back on the deck, and it is so difficult to try and push these controls into position, because obviously there's a spring between these two, and align it. It's a pain in the neck. I've got to be honest with you, I won't deny it. I'm not quite sure why the tape counter isn't lining up exactly, but yeah, it's a bit of a pain, this. Well, I didn't think I'd ever see this damn thing work, but there we go, it is working. How long it will stay working is another question, but quite like standing it up vertically. But there we go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you haven't fallen asleep.